3 years ago, my husband, my parents, and my adopted sister faked their deaths to test whether I had married into the DeLuca family for love or for power. They cut off my money, took my home, and left me and my son with nothing. 3 years later, they came back. My husband stepped out of a black Rolls Royce, looked down at me and said, "Evelyn, you passed the test." What he didn't know was that my son was already dead, and I was dying too. When I was digging stale bread out of a trash bag behind the old harbor warehouses, my husband came back from the dead. A black Rolls Royce slid through the puddles and stopped a few feet from me. The rear door opened, and Lucian DeLuca stepped out in a tailored suit, the DeLuca crest flashing at his cuff as if none of the last 3 years had happened. He looked me over and actually sounded pleased. "Evelyn," he said, "you passed the test." I stood there with half a moldy roll in my hand and felt my fingers shake. 3 years ago, the whole thing had been Livia's idea. She had slipped her arm through Lucian's and signaled that sweet smile she wore whenever she was about to ruin someone. "Let's find out whether my sister married you for love or for the DeLuca name. You, me, Mom and Dad, we all disappear. Freeze her accounts, pull the house, cut her off from the cars, the staff, the clubs, all of it. If she's still waiting for you in 3 years, then you'll know it was real." Lucian had laughed. Why wouldn't I do it? Evelyn is crazy about me. He had looked at Livia then, smug as hell, like he had already won. And now he was back to collect. But the first thing he asked was not whether I was alright. "Come home with me," he said. "Where's Leo?" "He's dead." He stared at me. "You froze every card I had. Your lawyers took the penthouse, the cars, even my access to the gate. The hospital needed a signature for the surgery deposit, and there was nobody left willing to sign. We couldn't afford his treatment, and he died because of it." For a second, he looked like he hadn't understood me. Then his gaze swept the alley, the dumpsters, the rotting pallets by the dock wall. But there was no one here. Just sour garbage, FLIs, old harbor rot, and me. I used to take Leo with me everywhere, even to the bathroom. Lucian knew that. That was why he couldn't accept that I was standing there alone. "Knock it off," he said, voice tightening. "I'm serious, Evelyn. I came to take you both home." "Home?" I laughed, and the sound cracked in my throat. "After you died, the DeLuca lawyers told me you'd left debts behind. They said the house was leveraged, the accounts were locked, the jewelry had to be surrendered, and my black card stopped working overnight. I was standing in the snow with a feverish 6-year-old and nowhere to go. So tell me, Lucian, where exactly was home?" He opened his mouth, then shut it again. "That was part of the test. The house was never really gone. Stop being stubborn and bring Leo out." "I'll apologize to him myself." "Go apologize to him at the cemetery." I pulled the crumpled death certificate from my coat and threw it at his chest. The moment it landed in his hand, I saw the tremor he tried to hide. Leo's name, his age, time of death, cause of death, congenital heart disease, complicated by acute heart failure. How is that possible? His eyes reddened so fast it looked painful. "I was gone for 3 years. How could Leo be dead? Are you doing this to get back at me?" He grabbed my shoulders hard enough to hurt. "Fine. I was wrong. But don't do this. Don't punish me with something like this. Bring him out." I only looked at him. Then another door opened. Livia stepped out in narrow heels and a cream coat. She bent, picked up the certificate, read it, and laughed. "Lucian, you can't seriously believe this." She turned the paper over and tapped the seal. "Look at it. The aging is overdone. The embossing is weak. The clerk's signature is shaky. 3 years ago, I was the one who arranged the paperwork for your fake debts. I know what a real file looks like. This is amateur hour." Her smile shifted to me. "You really thought this would work? I figured if you waited somewhere filthy enough and looked pathetic enough, Lucian would come back and fall for it. That's not what happened." My voice was raw. "Leo is dead. I'm not lying." "Enough." Lucian's face went cold. He threw the certificate back at me. "I almost believed you." He took a step back, already choosing her. "Bring Leo back to the DeLuca estate before tonight. He's 6 years old. He doesn't belong with a mother who lies this easily." He turned to leave. I lunged after him, but Livia moved first. She leaned close enough for me to smell her perfume. "You think I didn't know Leo was dead?" she whispered. My breath caught. She watched the color drain from my face and smiled wider. "You want to know why Lucian never found out? Every call about you and that boy came through me. The hospital contacted the DeLuca office. The family lawyers found out your son was critical. I rerouted the calls, deleted the emails, and buried every message before it reached him." I curled my hand into a fist so hard or my nails cut skin. She smoothed one glove finger at a time, enjoying herself. "Poor little Leo. After you got thrown out of the Moretti compound, he was diagnosed with heart disease. There was even a donor match. But you were broke. Your husband was dead. Your family was dead. And you couldn't hold the slot. You worked 4 jobs, begged half the city, and borrowed from loan sharks in neighborhoods. A Moretti woman should never even know by name. And you still came up short. My whole body started shaking. Shut your mouth. I went for her throat on instinct. Lucian ripped me off her before I could do any real damage and dragged Livia behind him, like she was the one in danger. The look he gave me was pure ice. For one awful second, he made me feel like I was the monster. Have you lost your mind? Lucian snapped. He stood in front of Livia with his shoulders squared, every inch the DeLuca heir, every inch the man I had once loved hard enough to break myself on. Livia covered her throat and let the tears come, on cue. I only asked where Leo was. Evelyn can live in a place like this if she wants, but a child can't. I said he should come back somewhere safe, and she tried to kill me. You liar. My voice shook. You know exactly. That's enough. Lucian cut me off without even looking at me. If you have any conscience left as a mother, you will bring Leo back to the estate. If you don't, we're done. We're done. I stared at him, and something in me went cold and hollow all at once. Even now, he would rather believe one polished lie from Livia than one ugly truth from me. Fine, I said. Send the papers. I'll sign. I walked away before either of them could answer, and went back to the old house I had been hiding in. Calling it a house was generous. It was one of the older Moretti safe properties on the edge of the city, abandoned on paper and buried under shell companies. After I lost everything, I slipped in through a side entrance and stayed there like a trespasser. After Leo died, I carried his ashes from one cheap room to another until I finally brought him back there. Even a ruined place was better than the street. I sat at the table and touched the photograph on the box with one finger. I'm sorry, I whispered. Mom couldn't protect you. I laid the divorce papers beside the box and reached for it just as the front door flew inward. Livia Canian first, a strip of gauze at her temple and a wounded look on her face. My parents followed right behind her, Vito Moretti and Sofia Moretti. Alive, healthy, dressed like the last 3 years had been one long vacation. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Over the years, I had caught blurred reflections in other people's posts, a yacht railing in the south of France, a terrace in Florence, a shadow that looked like my mother's profile in Paris. I had sat in a basement room with Leo burning up in my lap, zooming in on those photos until my eyes swelled shut. And still I told myself I had to be mistaken. I wasn't. They had not been missing. They had not been in danger. They had been touring Europe with my adopted sister while I was out in the cold trying to keep my son alive. They had walked away and called it a lesson. My mother's first words were, "Where's Leo?" I moved the ash box behind me on instinct. What do you want? My father's mouth twisted. Livia's hurt because of your kid. Our men said he came at her with a hammer. I stared at him. What? Livia pushed up her sleeve and showed off a bruise on her wrist. Don't play dumb. At the harbor, he jumped out and swung at me. He said he was getting revenge for you. If Mom and Dad's security team hadn't stepped in, he could have killed me. Leo had been dead for a year, and she was still using him. My mother's face hardened. Maybe we should have taken that child away from you 3 years ago. You passed Lucian's test, and you still raised Leo into a violent little thug. You are not fit to be his mother. Hand him over. Lucian and Livia will do a better job than you ever did. I said nothing. I lifted Leo's ash box and set it in front of them. Then teach him, I said. For the first time, both of them froze. The black and white memorial photo on the front of the box was impossible to miss. Then my father snapped. He ripped the urn from my hands and smashed it against the floor. The lid split open. Ash scattered across the wood. Fake ashes. He spat. You'd even use your own son's remains for pity? No. I lunged for it. He got there first. That little box was all I had left. It was the last place in the world where Leo still felt close enough to touch. My father crouched, scooped up a fistful of ash, and jammed it into my mouth. Go on, he said, eyes blazing. If it's fake, what's the problem? I choked. I gagged. My throat burned raw. There was blood in the taste of it, and still he kept. His hand locked against my jaw, while my mother stood there and watched. By the time he let go, I was on my knees in the middle of Leo's ashes, coughing so hard I could barely see. I tried to gather him back together with shaking hands, but the ash mixed with tears and blood and dirt from the floorboards. I was ruining the last thing I still had. Lucian stood a few steps away, looking down at me like I disgusted him. Did you ever stop to think, he said coldly, what Leo would say if he grew up and found out you used his death like a bargaining chip? I couldn't answer. Then my mother spoke, calm and decisive, like she was negotiating a shipment. I'm done arguing. If you won't hand over the child, then you can make this right another way. Her gaze pinned me where I knelt. Livia's in renal failure. You're a match. Give her your kidney. I looked up at the four of them. My husband, my parents, my sister, the people I had once loved most in the world, and I smiled. Sure, I said. The answer came too easily, and for once that unsettled them. They had expected pleading, bargaining, tears. They still thought they could use Lucian, Leo, marriage, family, all of it to keep me obedient. They didn't know I had been diagnosed 6 months ago with an aggressive, malignant tumor that had already spread. I was dying anyway. The surgery was scheduled for that same night. They took me to a private hospital, owned by one of the DeLuca family's front companies, the kind of place built for senators, judges, made men, and the women married to them. The hallways smelled like bleach and old money. Security stood by the elevators with earpieces and blank faces. Nobody asked who I was. I was on the list, and that was enough. I lay on the gurney feeling less like a patient than inventory. That had finally found a buyer. In the 2 hours before surgery, my parents and Lucian never left Livia's side. She was propped up on the next bed over, with gauze still at her temple, pale and delicate and handled like something breakable. My mother held her hand and spoke in the soft voice I used to spend years chasing. Don't be scared, sweetheart. It's just a transplant. I'll be waiting outside the whole time. Once you're recovered, we'll finish the Mediterranean route we missed last spring. My father stroked her shoulder with open pride. When you're back on your feet, I'll buy that villa on the coast you wanted. Lucian stood beside her bed with a tablet in hand, swiping through venue options as if he were planning a future instead of cutting mine open for parts. The church you liked in Ravello is still available, he told her. Once you're stable, I'll have the family office lock it down. We can do the engagement properly. His tone was gentle, almost tender. I watched the three of them and felt the empty place inside me widen. I was going into surgery too. Nobody asked if I was scared. Nobody asked if I was in pain. Nobody asked whether I might not come back out. I had spent so long being overlooked that I thought I was used to it. I wasn't. If I die on that table, I asked quietly, will any of you care? Silence dropped over the room. My parents turned, almost surprised to find I was still there. My mother frowned first, then looked annoyed. Don't say things like that. This is a kidney donation, not a firing squad. My father's jaw tightened. What kind of woman talks herself into a coffin before the anesthesia even hits? If this goes smoothly, we can talk about bringing you properly back into the family. But you need to stop the dramatics. Back into the family, as if they had every right to throw me out and every right to let me back in whenever it suited them. I looked at Lucian last. For a few seconds, he said nothing. Then he crossed the room, took my hand, and squeezed it. Those hands had once slid a ring onto my finger. They had wiped my face while I labored with Leo. They had held me in the dark and promised I was his wife, his home, his future. Now they felt like ice. Don't spiral, he said. Once Livia is stable and this mess is behind us, I'll make it right. Your place at my table is still there. You'll still be Mrs. DeLuca. I stared at him. Even now, he thought I had stayed for the title. I said nothing. When the nurse came to wheel me away, I let his hand slip from mine without a word. As they pushed me toward the operating room, I looked back one last time. My husband, my mother, my father, the three people who should have protected me. Instead, every worst moment of my life had started with one of them. The medication went into my fore. The lights blurred overhead. In that hazy moment, I thought I saw him standing beside the operating table, small and quiet, reaching for my hand. His little hand felt warm and soft in mine. I held on tight. I'm taking you with me, baby. We're leaving. When the anesthesia pulled me under, everything went black. Then I was suddenly looking down at my own body from above the operating table. The surgical lights burning white over my open abdomen. The lead surgeon glanced from my chart to the Sean on the screen and went still. Why wasn't this flagged? She only has one kidney. Her assistant blanched. The family file didn't mention it. That isn't the only problem. The surgeon flipped through the blood work, then looked back at me. Metastatic cancer, extensive spread, liver involvement, lung lesions, nodes everywhere. She should never have been cleared for surgery. A second later, the monitor let out a flat, screaming tone. Her heart stopping. Everything happened at once. Compressions, medication, the paddles. A sharp count, another shock. I watched it all without panic. I had been expecting this for months. By the time it came, there was hardly any fear left. After 12 minutes, the surgeon stepped back and pulled off her gloves. Time of death, she said. The assistant swallowed. What about Miss Moretti? Mr. DeLuca said she takes priority. The donor is gone, but the organ is viable. Notify the transplant team. We continue. I looked down at the body they were cutting apart and felt almost nothing. Maybe that was the last mercy death offered. distance. I drifted out into the corridor. My parents and Lucian were still outside the restricted doors, waiting with the kind of tension reserved for people they believed mattered. My mother kept asking whether Livia would come through the surgery. My father assured her DeLuca money could buy the best surgeons on either side of the Atlantic. Lucian said the private wing had handled bullet wounds, emergency extractions, even witness cleanups for the family. A transplant would be routine. Nobody asked about me. Hearing them talk about kidneys dragged me 5 years back. My father had been the one on the table. Then, both Livia and I matched. I agreed to donate before anyone finished asking. The night before surgery, a sedan with fake plates boxed my car in on a side street. I woke up in a basement clinic with my wrists strapped down and gauze stuffed between my teeth. Somebody had already started the anesthesia. I remember the stink of disinfectant, the surgeon's rubber gloves, and the woman's voice telling them to make the incision lower so the scar would match the story. When I made it home days later, stitched up and half delirious, my mother slapped me hard enough to split my lip. She said I had run, that I had almost killed my father, that Livia had saved the family, while I had been too scared to do the same. Livia was upstairs in bed, pale and weak-looking, a neat bandage on her side. She cried when she saw me and asked them not to be too harsh with me. They fell for it completely. From that day on, everything that had once been mine went to her. That was the beginning of my exile from the Moretti house. The rest happened slowly. Invitations stopped coming. My place at the table disappeared. Every kindness I received was weighed against the debt they said I owed Livia for saving our father. By the time I met Lucian DeLuca, I was already drowning. I used to think he pulled me out. Standing above my own corpse, I understood the truth. He had just offered me a prettier cage. The surgeon finally came out more than an hour later, mask hanging loose around her throat, eyes tired. Lucian and my parents converged on her before she reached the nurse's station. "How is Livia?" my mother asked. "Is the graft holding?" my father cut in. Lucian didn't ask who had died in his operating room. He asked whether the recipient was stable. "The transplant was successful," the surgeon said. "She's in recovery now." As for the donor, a nurse rolled Livia past them at that exact moment, pale under warm blankets, an oxygen line under her nose. My mother burst into tears and followed the bed. My father went with her. Lucian never even looked back. The surgeon stopped speaking because nobody was listening. An orderly tagged my body and wheeled it down to the morgue. That should have hurt more than it did. Instead, I stood there beside the steel drawer and thought, of course, even dead, I was still an afterthought. In Livia's room, the scene looked almost festive in a sick, expensive way. My mother sat at the bedside wiping her eyes. My father was already on the phone with the family office, telling them to release the Coast House funds and have flowers brought in. Lucian opened a velvet box and fastened an emerald necklace around Livia's throat. "You liked this set at the Winter Gala. It's yours." Livia touched the stones with weak fingers and looked up at him through her lashes. "Lucian, can I ask you something?" He nodded. "If the woman you married had been me instead of Evelyn, would you have been happier?" The room went still. My mother made a face like she wanted to stop the conversation, but did not quite dare. My father watched. Lucian, with the flat patience of a man pretending not to weigh an alliance in real time. Lucian took longer than he should have. Finally, he said, "Evelyn is still my wife." Livia's eyes filled instantly. "That's not what I meant. And you know it. You've known how I feel for years. You stayed after every charity gala. You came whenever I called. You let me lean on you in front of everyone. Don't stand there and act like I made it all up." My mother sighed without any word. My father did not bother hiding his meaning. "Affection isn't a contract," he said. "If the two of you want the same thing, Evelyn can be compensated." Compensated. That was what my life came down to in the end. A settlement figure, a transfer, a line item to be absorbed into the cost of doing business between powerful families. For the first time since I died, I felt cold. Maybe Lucian heard something in his own voice. Maybe he saw too much relief in Livia's face, whatever it was. He left her room not long after and headed down the hall to mine. The bed was empty. He stopped short. "Where is she?" The nurse he grabbed looked as if she had been waiting for this question and dreading it. She led him to the surgeon's office instead. I tried to speak to the family after the operation, but none of you stayed long enough to hear me. Lucian's jaw tightened. "Where is Evelyn?" "She died on the table." He stared at her. He was quiet for a moment. "No," he said, "that's not it. She went into arrest during the procedure. We could not bring her back." The surgeon's tone hardened. "She was critically ill before she ever came into my OR. 1 kidney, advanced metastatic cancer, severe anemia, organ stress, malnutrition. Her chart reads like a slow execution. Did anyone in your family actually review her file?" He looked as though she had slapped him. "She was talking to me an hour ago." "Yes," the surgeon said. Dying patients can still speak. She'd been sick for a long time. She was gaunt, coughing up blood, and her labs were terrible. Anyone paying attention would have seen she was crashing. But nobody asked why. Nobody stopped the procedure. The only instruction we were given was to save the recipient at all costs. Then he caught on one detail. One kidney? The surgeon folded her arms. Yes. She had donated before, or been made to. I can't tell you which. But by the time she got here, she only had one left. And now that one is in Livia Moretti. He left before she finished the sentence and ran all the way to the morgue. I followed him through the coated doors to the morgue. He yanked open the drawer so hard the metal rattled. The moment he saw my face, he dropped to his knees. Evelyn. He touched my cheek with shaking fingers, then stopped when the sheet slipped lower and showed how little was left of me. Only then did he see it. How sick I had been. How badly I had been fading. I watched him cry over the body he had handed to the knife and felt nothing but exhaustion. When he looked up again, something in his face had hardened. Find out who took her first kidney, he told his captain over the phone. I want everything from 5 years ago. Hospital records, shell clinics, private surgeons, bribed nurses, charity transfers, burner payments. Tear the floorboards up if you have to. His man answered at once. In the DeLuca world, that tone meant blood was coming. The DeLuca machine moved fast. By morning, Lucian had a stack of files thick enough to choke on. Offshore transfers routed through. Moretti holding companies. Footage from a clinic that should have burned its cameras. A falsified post-operative report in Livia's name. And a preserved tissue sample from my father's transplant that matched my DNA. He stood in a conference room above, the private wing with the dossier spread across the table, while his consigliere walked him through it, line by line. I had been abducted the night before the surgery. A doctor on Moretti payroll had taken my kidney. Livia had paid for a staged scar and a forged recovery chart. My father had received my organ and spent 5 years thanking the wrong daughter. The room stayed quiet when the briefing ended. Lucian braced both hands on the table and bowed his head. Years ago, she told me Livia had something to do with it. He went straight to Livia's room. My parents were there, of course. My mother sat by the bed, spooning broth between Livia's lips. My father stood by the window taking calls from the Moretti underboss. They both looked up when Lucian entered with the captains and a folder. This isn't the time, my father said. She needs rest. Lucian dropped the file on the blanket in front of Livia. The pages slid everywhere. Oh, it's exactly the time. He turned to my parents first. Do you know why Evelyn is dead? My mother stiffened. She donated a kidney. Things go wrong. She had one kidney left, Lucian said. The other one has been in your husband for 5 years. My father gave a short, disbelieving laugh. That's nonsense. Livia was the donor. Lucian threw the DNA report at him. Read it. My father scanned the page once and went white. There's more, Lucian said. The clinic, the bribes, the staged scar, the security footage from the alley behind the surgical entrance. Your daughter had Evelyn taken, carved open, and dumped in a warehouse. My mother stared at Livia as if she had never seen her before. Tell me that isn't true. Livia clutched the blanket to her chest. Mom. And Leo, Lucian cut in, dropping another file on top of the first. You want that too? Hospital outreach logs. Emails intercepted at the DeLuca office. Call records rerouted through your private switchboard. She buried every message about my son until the boy lost his place in line and died waiting. My mother made a sound I had only heard once before, when I was a child and a car bomb went off to blocks from the Moretti restaurant. It was the sound of shot cracking open. My father sat down hard in the chair by the window and kept reading as if numbers on a page could somehow make this less true. They had spent years treating me like the liar. Now the proof was on Livia's hospital bed, and nobody could look away. Cornered, Livia stopped pretending. The fear went out of her face first, then the weakness. What was left underneath was something colder and uglier than I remembered. Yes, she said, it's true. So what? My mother reeled back as if she had been struck. Livia laughed once, a brittle little sound. Do you know what it's like growing up in a house where the real daughter gets everything by birthright? Her face on the society pages, her name in every room, her future arranged before she was old enough to drink. I got your charity and your guilt. She got the bloodline. You had our name. My mother shot back. Our money, our protection. And none of it made me her. Livia said, I was always second. The adopted girl, the extra place setting. She looked at Lucian then, and there it was, the thing she had wanted all along. Then she married into the DeLuca family. She got the city, the penthouse, the bodyguards, the title. You. Why shouldn't I take something back? My father found his voice. So you kidnapped her? You stole her kidney? You let her son die? He died because she was weak. Livia's smile sharpened. And Evelyn was dying anyway. The room went silent again. Lucian stepped toward the bed. What did you just say? Livia did not flinch. 6 months ago she had the first scan. I got to the report before she did. I had the file swapped, then bought off the private doctor she saw. After that, every time she complained about pain, I made sure it looked like dramatics. I switched her medication too. The pills I gave her were rough on the only kidney she had left. Why let cancer do all the work when I could help it along? My mother screamed at her to stop talking. Livia kept going. I even offered her a way out. Leave you. Leave both families. Disappear quietly. But she wouldn't. She kept clinging to a marriage that had already turned to ash. Lucian's face changed at that. It was not grief anymore. It was rage stripped to the bone. And Leo? He asked. Livia rolled one shoulder. Sickly little thing, always crying for his father. I got tired of hearing his name. My father crossed the room so fast the four-pole tipped over. You murderous little bitch. Lucian's men blocked him, not to protect Livia, to keep him from spoiling what DeLuca Justice might still want to claim. The surgeon was called in and confirmed everything Livia had bragged about. My cancer was real, advanced, treatable, only in the sense that time might have been bought. The transplant surgery had erased even that chance. If she had received proper oncology care and been kept off the operating table, the surgeon said, she might have had months, possibly longer. But none of that matters now. She's dead. Dead. The word hit my mother like a bullet this time. Not as an inconvenience. Not as collateral. As me. I watched the understanding settle over all of them at last. The test. The exile. Leo. The surgery. Every cruel little choice had led here. No one said it out loud, but they all knew the same thing. They had killed me. My mother broke first. She slapped Livia so hard the sound cracked through the room. How dare you? She screamed. We took you in. We raised you. Evelyn called you her sister. Livia pressed a hand to her burning cheek and smiled through the blood at the corner of her mouth. Did she? Or did she just pity me? My father looked at her with flat disgust. Whatever softness he had once reserved for her was gone. From this moment on, you are no longer a Moretti. That should have mattered. It didn't. Livia only looked past him at Lucian. Even now, with the room in ruins and her lies stripped bare, she still wanted the same prize. I made mistakes, she whispered. I know that, but I can fix this. I can be what she was for you. I can learn her voice, her manner, the way she dressed. Lucian, look at me. I'm still here. Not for long, he said. He crossed the room, took her jaw in one hand, and studied her face with quiet revulsion. Then he drew the knife from his jacket and cut from cheekbone to mouth in one clean, brutal line. My mother screamed. My father did not move. Blood poured over the sheets. Livia shrieked and clutched her face. That face will never be used in Evelyn's place again, Lucian said, handing the knife back to one of his captains. As for the rest of what you stole, her work, her contacts, her charity boards, the degrees you padded, the donors you conned, I'm taking all of it apart. Within 48 hours, Livia lost every board seat she had. The foundations cut TIs. Fashion houses wanted nothing to do with her. The private university that had polished her RSUM opened an internal review. Invitations dried up. So did the marriage prospects the Morettis had lined up for her. In their world, reputation was everything, and Lucian destroyed hers. The kidney she had killed for did not save her. My body had been full of cancer. The transplant had been performed after death, under compromised conditions, with a recipient already weak. Rejection set in fast. Infection followed. Livia spent 2 weeks in intensive care, screaming at nurses and begging for more drugs before her organs began to fail one after another. She died before the month was out. My mother did not survive it in any meaningful way. She started carrying the repaired ash box everywhere, talking to it as if I were still a little girl in braids. Some days she called it Evelyn, some days Leo. Once she cradled a carved piece of driftwood and tried to feed it soup. My father shut down 3 Moretti overseas operations, resigned his seat onto consortium boards, and took her to an old Sicilian estate the family used when it wanted to disappear. He left the city without a goodbye. Lucian arranged my funeral himself. If there was a rite the DeLucas could pay for, he paid for it. The church overflowed with white flowers. Black cars lined the street for blocks. Men who had never lowered their voices for anyone spoke in whispers around my casket. He put me under glass for the final viewing, as if splendor could make up for what had been done to me in life. Every night after that, he came back. Sometimes he brought records from his investigation and read them aloud like confessions. Sometimes he sat in silence, tie loosened, hands shaking, staring at the woman he had failed to know. He told me he had traced every flop house, basement room, church shelter, emergency clinic, and pawn shop I had passed through after the test began. He knew now how many doors had closed in my face. He knew how many nights Leo and I had gone hungry. "You never wanted the DeLuca name," he said one night, seated beside the glass. "You wanted me. That's the part I can't live with." He looked older then, not in years, in damage. "Just look at me once, Evelyn." I stood on the far side of the room and said nothing. He laughed under his breath. It sounded like a man cracking apart. "That's fair," he said. Then he took the gun from his shoulder holster and put the barrel to his chest. The shot was muffled by wool and bone. Blood sprayed across the white camellias at the base of my casket. He dropped to his knees first, then to the floor, eyes still fixed on me, as if regret might bridge what he had broken. I looked at him once, then turned away. I had spent many years begging the wrong people to love me. Not anymore. This time, I was the one walking away. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more interesting stories.